Okay, this first picture here is a picture actually of Grammy Ida. That would be Joey's great-grandmother, my dad's mother, and a woman that we called Auntie Levin to distinguish her from my grandmother. My grandmother was Ida Levin and Auntie Levin was Ida Levin, and that's the way everyone knew her. Now, Auntie Levin was a character she came to the States in the late 1800s, and she came with her husband, Uncle Ellis, who was my great-grandfather's brother. And she was just kind of a wild character. They actually had an open relationship. They believed in free love. And not only that, but they would have menage a trois. They would have three in the bed at the same time. And I understand that Uncle Ellis loved to watch and all of that stuff. I can't save this for the kids. Now, Auntie Levin, the story goes, in 1893, had an act at the Columbian Exposition, which was the World's Fair in Chicago. And the story they always told was that part of her act was peeling and eating a banana standing on her head in Lake Michigan. Well, anyways, when my grandmother came to America, she came to Chicago because her uncle and aunt lived there. And she, of course, was a greenhorn. She didn't know anything about anything. And, of course, she moves into this household where anything went. And in order to enculturate her, Auntie Levin would put her in her Model T Ford and take her to a beer hall, and then conveniently got lost, so that Grammy Ida would have to figure out her way home from a beer hall. And she learned how to speak English very quickly. Grandma was dressed in a Gibson girl dress. This was kind of the fashion at that time, and of course she couldn't afford to buy one, so she sewed this entire dress by herself. The reason there is a dog in the picture is that Auntie Levin had a vaudeville act, and the vaudeville act was having two trained dogs, and I even know the dogs' names. They were Teddy and Moody, and this happens to be Teddy the dog, standing between Grammy Ida and Auntie Levin. I actually knew Auntie Levin, and actually I have some of her stuff on tape. She was a real salty character and didn't mind what she said, to whom she said it. And she'd come over for dinner on Saturday or Sunday evening and would just get everyone roaring because of the stories that she told and the crude things that she said about other people. And I remember it was a real kick because when she died, I must have been about 13 years old. She actually left $1,000 in her will for me, which was considered a significant amount of money at that time. Well, this brings us very far ahead. This is a picture of me as a young rabbi with Mommy and her shaitel at that time. And this is little Chani holding the Havdalah candle. The Chicago Tribune did a piece about us entitled "A Young Rabbi Embraces Tradition." It was about me and how I was leading a congregation out in Morton Grove, Illinois. And there are all kinds of pictures in it, and the entire article quotes me wrong time and time again, which should have been a precursor, cautionary tale to me that whatever you say in the newspaper is going to come out wrong. In fact, one of the pictures further on says Rabbi Wilson's congregation doesn't read Hebrew at all, or at least reads it poorly. And the picture in the congregation is of the only Israeli who belonged to the shul. And despite everything, it was an interesting piece. And of course, they didn't shoot this on Shabbos; they shot it during the week at our house. And actually, and I can't find it in here, I was part of the cover piece. This was for the Chicago Tribune at a time that they still had their own autonomous Sunday magazine. And the cover shot was of me, the young and dynamic rabbi, kind of holding out his hand and haranguing the congregation about something or another. And it's funny that we could never get the people to shul but we told him that we were going to be photographing things for the Chicago Tribune, and they all showed up that evening. So when we did a mock of Shabbos services. Let's see, this is a picture that was taken at Uncle Joe's wedding. Uncle Joe was the person to whom Joey was named. The reason he was named that is that Uncle Joe, at the age of 48, died of a heart attack, and Joey was born just a few weeks later, so we honored him by naming him after Uncle Joe. This is Pa, my grandfather, my mother's father, and this is Bubby. She was named Anna Goldsmith, for whom Chani was named. And Uncle Joe was interesting. You don't see his wife in the picture. She was known as Aunt Rhoda, and everyone disliked Aunt Rhoda because she was very pretentious and she refused to have kids. Uncle Joe, on the other hand, was a very jovial guy. He'd always get tickets for the White Sox game for me and would take him around. I don't know what he did at that time, but he was what we would refer to as a lovable scoundrel. He constantly got in trouble with the law or with other people in business, and Pa would have to bail him out. And the story goes that Pa married again after Bubby died, and he married a woman named Lil, who wasn't a particularly nice person, but Pa always had the dream of being, we all right? Of being married to an American woman, an Amerikanische Frau. And when he married Lil, my mother, who was Uncle Joe's sister, told Pa not to bail him out this time, that he had to learn his lesson. Sounds very much like the movie Parenthood. And my mother told Pa that he shouldn't do this, and Pa, of course, ran right home, told his wife Lil, and Lil told Rhoda, Uncle Joe's wife, and everyone was angry at everyone. And for years and years, Grandma and Uncle Joe didn't speak with each other. And then they had a reconciliation around the time of my bar mitzvah, and Joe cleaned up his act at that time. He had a very good job selling sportswear on the south side of Chicago. And one of the great coups that we scored that showed that there was no ill relationship was that Mommy and I, when Mommy was still pregnant with Chani, actually went out on the south side to visit Uncle Joe and Rhoda, and this was kind of considered the icebreaker. This, I think, is a picture of Papa, of Joey's grandfather, my father, and it was, if I can ever get it open, was taken as a portrait shortly after he was promoted to second lieutenant in the Army. He went up from buck private, and he had been a sergeant for a number of years. He was actually a drill instructor in DI, and shortly after that he was promoted to the first rank of an officer, of a commissioned officer, which was a second lieutenant. You'll notice that he's wearing what's called a Sam Brown belt underneath. I actually had that and don't know what I did with it. And this was significant because when Papa was in the Army, it was still called the Brown Shoe Army, and everyone wore brown uniforms and brown shoes, and part of their uniform was the Sam Brown belt, and they carried a saber by their side. This was still left over from World War I, and then Papa transitioned to what was called the Black Shoe Army, which was considered more elite, and actually fought in World War II. He was sent over to the Philippines. And there's an interesting story that goes along with that. Papa was trained to be an anti-aircraft gunner, to shoot a howitzer. And he was so smart at it because he, of course, was a brain. He was very cerebral, and he wanted to go overseas and fight. And the Army wouldn't let him go and fight because he was too valuable to them as an anti-aircraft instructor. And it was right toward the end of the war that he was allowed to go to the Philippines and actually shoot his anti-aircraft cannon a couple of times, and he actually shot down a Japanese plane after all of those years of working in the States. But he never told Grammy Ida, his mother, that he was sent overseas. He created this ruse that he was still in Bremerton, Washington, teaching about anti-aircraft because he was afraid that she would be too scared if she knew that he had actually gone overseas. So this is Papa, and these medals here are for proficiency in various kinds of shooting. Pistol D, which was pistol dismounted, anti-aircraft, and so on. And you'll notice that he had a lot of things on his badge, and he actually retired with many more. The pistol D goes back to very early in the 20th century because there was a pistol M as well, and that attested to your proficiency of shooting a pistol while mounted on a horse. He learned that, but his badge was actually in dismounted pistol. Let's see what else. This is a picture of whom we refer to as the Bubbe Rachel. Not Bubbe Rachel, but the Bubbe Rachel. And in fact, this was a suitcase that belonged to her. And you'll notice she's wearing a very ugly shaitel. This was toward the end of her life. And she had a number of daughters, I can't remember the number, and 2 sons as well. And the kids really couldn't agree about anything, but they all agreed that they loved her tremendously. She was my great-grandmother. She was Joey's great-great-grandmother. She lived in the town in Europe that was known as Suwałk. She actually came from a town about 5 miles away called Mariampol. When she met Zadie, here is Zadie, she began to live in Suwałk. Zadie's brother was the one who was married to Auntie Levin, so there was quite a clash between Zadie's brother, Uncle Ellis, who was very Americanized and wore a 3-piece suit with a pocket watch, and of course Zadie was dressed in a typically Litvish way. You can see that he had a pipchik in his mouth, a little pipe, and he spent, when they came to America, most of the time learning. And he and Bubby came to America in around 1924, and the reason that they came to Chicago was that Uncle Ellis, his brother, sponsored them to come over. So that even though Uncle Ellis was of an entirely different genre, he still had a tremendous amount of love for Zadie and the family. And I'm honored that I'm the next grandfather in the family after his, who is called Zadie, and that was by request. Zadie used to teach all of the kids, his own grandchildren, how to read and speak Hebrew. And Papa said that when he was very young and Zadie taught him to read Hebrew, that every time that Papa got a lesson right, Zadie was a little bit adept at sleight of hand, and he would take his hand and you couldn't see anything in it and would drop a penny as though it were coming down from the sky. And Papa would look at him and say, Zadie, just like the kids nowadays say, Daddy. And the Zadie said, what? He said, where did the penny come from? And Zadie said, a malach hat das geschickt von Himmel, that an angel sent it down from heaven. And of course, back then, a penny was a fortune. You could buy 5 pieces of candy for a penny. And they, of course, were married to each other. She passed away in 1947 or 46. He died in 1948. His name was Moshe Yitzchak, and I was given my first name, Moshe, because of that. And I was always told legendary things about him. He actually was a Bal Kriya, and in his later years he read Torah at a shul that was called the Tiferes Yisrael, which everyone knew as the Roby Street shul. And ironically, we lived on what was called Damon Avenue, which was Roby Street many, many years later.